right, so we are ready to go, Bob. As soon as you start, she's going to probably turn right over to the cameras. And if that, there we go, she's ready to go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June 27th, 28th meeting of the Town Council. I'll now call to order. First item of agenda this evening is the approval of minutes of our last meeting, which was June 14th.
So moved.
Item has been moved for discussion. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Or is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Second. Any member of the public wish to comment on the minutes? Any member of the board wish to comment on the minutes? No comment. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, approve the minutes. So moved. Second order of business is the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the stuff is a repeat of the last meeting, but I'll just keep it moving forward. We have begun our annual paving program. A lot of the work in the west end of the town has now been completed, and we expect to be landing on the Forth side probably in a couple of weeks. We have some drainage work that has to be completed first down at the bottom of, I think, of Carriage and Hallmark area, and then we'll be beginning pavement shortly thereafter. We'll also be paving Main Street from about Tuttle Road to the North Yarmouth Town line and Greely Road extension, and that may start as soon as July 19th. We also ask that folks go to the website to comply with our fireworks ordinance. The crier has a lot of information related to that, and we are one of the few towns that does have a allowance around the holidays for basically commercial, non-commercial fireworks. What is that? Retail fireworks?
Consumer.
Consumer, thank you, Shirley. Consumer fireworks, so people can hopefully safely and legally discharge of fireworks around the 4th of July. So please follow those rules. That would be much appreciated. The DOT has informed us that they'll be beginning work around on Longwoods Road up to about Turkey Lane, part of Main Street, part of all of Route 9. But that will begin in earnest around July 26th. And you'll see heavy equipment out there, basically grading shoulders, getting shoulders ready for what they call a pavement wrap, which is a ground-up pavement, ground up into small particles, mixed with cement as well as asphalt, and then spread over almost the width of the road. And that will be the new base for the road, and then they will be paving over that sometime in early September. It's an oversimplification of the process, but it will take several months to complete. They did something very similar in North Yarmouth, I think up on 115 several years ago. So that, we're looking forward to that. Route 9, Longwoods Road, will be widened out to have 11-foot travel lanes and 4-foot shoulders for the full length and match up to the work that we completed just a few years ago with DOT. So we're looking forward to that. Just for the public, we closed out the fiscal year in great shape. You're going to be hearing a report from our finance director shortly. But I do want to express that I'm very, very proud of the staff that we have here and the work they've done over the last 13 months. We were one of the first towns in southern Maine to open. Some towns have just recently opened through the pandemic. We were open last June, over a year ago June. And our staff has done an excellent job of basically trying to provide services and some level of normalcy throughout this. And it's been very difficult, as you can imagine. I'm really, really proud of what they have accomplished. Our operating budget came in nearly $380,000 under, which is a testament to them. And we are in great shape moving forward. We are expecting to hear from John Brushwine, our assessor, in a few weeks. As you know, the assessor annually recommends setting the tax rate to you. When we went through the budget process, I think we were somewhere around 2.5%, but We have been able to reduce that number to just below 1% now. So on July 26th, John will be here, and I hope to present that tax rate to you. It'll be somewhere around 30 cents or less than 1%. And that is combined town and school. So more as we get closer to that date. But that's all I have tonight, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tom?
Can you tell us the ordinance for the fireworks one more time?
It's, I think it's called the, yeah, appropriately or inappropriately, I think it's the explosive ordinance. We have it posted on the website as well as on the town crier. And I think the timetable, and I might need some help from maybe Shirley, if you can. I think it's
Yeah,
the
I'm
day
trying to look it
before
up.
the 4th of July, that beginning at noon, and the day after the 4th of July up until noon, that fireworks, consumer fireworks are permitted within the town. And we just encourage you to, be safe, especially in light of what we have right now, as dry as things are. And, we just want people to stay safe and enjoy the 4th. I think that's close, Shirley.
I'll pull it up.
But anyway, it is posted online, and it
Yeah.
is in the crier. Liza has posted it a couple weeks in a row so that people would be aware of it.
The only reason I bring it up is I've already heard fireworks in the distance.
Those are from Falmouth, Tom.
Oh, they're from Falmouth, okay.
Everybody in Cumberland complies with the ordinance, so it must
You
be.
have to remember that our ordinance only applies to consumer fireworks as well.
Right.
That anyone who wants to light off commercial fireworks for a wedding or an event and hire a pyrotechnician, they go through the state. So we don't even see that in the town hall.
Okay. Thanks, Shirley.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, moving on to my favorite part of the evening. If anybody's been here the last few months, public discussions. Anybody who wants to address the council on a matter that is not noticed in the agenda, please feel free to step to the microphone, identify yourself, and you have our ear. 5 minutes. No? Okay, that's great, thank you.
Jeez.
That'd be nice to me. Legislation and policy, 21-066, to consider and act on a mass gathering permit for the Maine Celebration of Lights to be held from November 26th through January 2nd at the Cumberland Fairgrounds. So there was an explanation in our packet concerning this. Mr. Manager, is there anybody from the organization here to represent this item? Somebody waving their hand.
Did you bring a video at all? What's that? Did you bring your video at all?
Actually, I have it out in the car.
Oh, I was wondering, yeah, you did, and Bren,
Get it to work on AirPlay when we were here earlier.
oh, you couldn't? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you're missing something very cool. I'll email it to you, but it is,
So before I give up the microphone, to those in our audience, this is, if anybody's been down to Booth Bay Harbor for the Festival of Lights that they have down there, this is on a scale or an idea that's very similar. So your name, sir?
Eugene Dean, and I reside from Salisbury, Massachusetts. So our company is Fiesta Shows, based in Seabrook, New Hampshire. We're primarily in the amusement business, and last year with COVID, we developed a few,
Speaking to the microphone.
we developed some holiday drive-through light shows that would be COVID permissible. So we received great success. We operated one outside of the city of Boston in Waltham, Massachusetts, another one at the Bolton Fairgrounds in Lancaster, Massachusetts. So we're currently in the market of developing a few more, to which we approach the Cumberland Fair to put one on there. They're typically a 1 mile long path of LED lit lights. There's separate ones from animated to still scenes. There's Christmas music, holiday music played through an FM transmitter into the car, so there's no exterior sound that's generated and created, while progressing the course. Typically, the speed limit is anywhere from about 5 to 10 miles an hour, depending on the people that are, going through and just admiring the lights as we pass through. So it's very family-friendly. We have one food booth that sells fried dough, popcorn and cotton candy and hot chocolate. Then it's a drive-through process also, so when people come through, they'll check in at the entrance gate. All the tickets, we heavily push online. Last year, 98% of all our sales were done online in advance. We curtail how many tickets are sold nightly, so that's what really drives that demand for online sales, to know that you can get in. Because we want to make sure, at both those locations and any location, that, we can maintain the traffic flow. So on any given night that we're open, we have 2 different segments of time that we operate. One is from 5 to 7 and the other is from 7 to 9. So that way you have a time ticket that allows you to come in during those, during those times. And what we do, although it's not officially published, we open the gates about 20 minutes early, so that if anyone does come through, we just want to make sure it's dark enough, but, around 4:45, we're in good shape, that, we just want to make sure that we don't get any backups or any traffic concerns.
Any questions from the council? Mark?
Yeah, I had a question about the route that was going to be taken. There was a question in there about layout between layout A and layout B. Do you know the reasons why they switched to layout B versus A? Was it given an issue of tight turning for vehicles or something to that effect?
Yeah, it was primarily just for, based on what the grounds are used for off-season as well, and based on also on the road conditions, they felt that it was better, the conditions were better of the roadways themselves on the grounds.
Gotcha, and that's they being,
They being the
Chief-
fair,
the
as
fair.
when we discussed with the fair, the best route to take.
okay. Have we had, Mr. Manager, maybe you know this or maybe you know it, have we had somebody from a safety standpoint look at this issue?
Yes, the town clerk typically meets with the police chief and the fire chief when they review these applications, and they have approved the layout as presented.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Is anyone from the fairgrounds here to discuss their reasons for, okay, I'd be interested in hearing your support or concerns. I do have a lot of concerns about the traffic. Are you a for-profit organization,
Yes.
which is different from the Booth Bay Lights, because those monies go to support the botanical gardens, so that's a little bit different. So that concerns me a little, but I'd be interested to hear.
Well, they have applied for a mass gathering permit to basically use the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds has, Lyle's here, so I'll let him speak for
Yeah,
himself. but-
I would like that.
Before you speak, I want to hear from the rest of the councils first, so if there's something that you can be addressed.
Okay.
Anybody else from the council?
Mine is just, just because of the timing, this will overlap with the racing, but will be done, like at least both things will be happening at the venue, different times, right?
I think so. I don't
We have
think
some
so.
in December.
You want me to answer that now?
Okay, or you can, I'm happy, but that was my question of like the overlapping of activities at the fairgrounds. And then similarly, I think just interested in like thoughts of how you keep this traffic flow. Like it's not a lot of mileage, and maybe if you could also, we're just putting all out there, how these numbers relate to like the Cumberland Fair, like from a daily estimate, that would be helpful.
They have all that
Okay.
information.
Ron?
I'm sure Lyle can answer all the questions. I mean, I'm fine with it, so.
Tom?
Is there a issue on noise at all? None?
There is not. All the music is transmitted through your car radio, so
Oh, okay.
it's all within that. So it's zero noise impact, really.
All right, thank you.
Want me to address some of the other things now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the point made by Mrs. Foster that, yeah, there will be some overlap, but some of the racing also may be winding down, but then depending on weather conditions. So that may be adjusted anyways. Vehicle backing up is not likely, we believe, because if you can envision, if you're facing the main gate on the front of the fairgrounds, to the right, there's also a big main entrance, and that goes down into a back road, which is about 3 lanes wide. So even if we only use 2 of those lanes, we can stage, I say we, EJ can stage probably 125 cars easily without having anything back into the road. So we've kind of thought about that ahead of time.
Okay.
This may be a for-profit enterprise, but I'm assuming that there is some remuneration for the Farmers Club.
Absolutely. I wouldn't, yes, for sure. Yeah. We're a nonprofit too, but we have a lot of stuff to keep our head above water, so, yeah. And it seemed like it would be a good fit, and so.
So this is an action item for the council. Is there any member of the public who would like to address this or have some questions that they may like to have answered?
Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road, Cumberland. This may have been said, but I didn't catch it. Will there be police, Cumberland Police and Fire EMT involved in this or not? Will there be any cost to the town?
There'll be no cost that the town incurs. Any request for police will be reimbursed at their detail rate.
Okay, just wondered about that.
Anyone else? So the request is for us to approve this mass gathering permit. So I think we should have a motion and then some discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve the mass gathering permit for Maine Celebration of Lights to be held from November 26th through January 2nd at the Cumberland Fairgrounds.
Second.
Second by Tom. And discussion. Mike?
I can't think of a better use of this fairground. I think this is, after the year we've had with COVID, and to get people out to enjoy the holidays, I couldn't be more supportive of this use, and there's no noise invasion in the neighborhood. And, I mean, they're starting up at the end of rush hour. They're not going late in the evening, they're going till 9 o'clock, and, Mr. Chairman, it's got my full support.
Ron?
I think this is a really good thing. I mean, it's very safe. I mean, people are in their own vehicles, there's no noise. I have 5 grandchildren. I think it would be wonderful if I can load them all into the car and they all go down, we take the tour down through the fairgrounds. I just think it's something that's family-oriented and it helps the fairgrounds, so.
Mike?
Yeah, I would also second your comments. I agree with both Counselor Eads and Counselor Kopp. When I read through the packet before you presented tonight, I immediately thought of myself driving my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old through the event, so it sounds like a great time, and it also saves me potentially an hour-long drive up to Booth Bay, so I appreciate that. So I would support it as is.
Shirley?
It doesn't feel right to me, so I will probably be the dissenting. I do support the Booth Bay Botanical Gardens, and it feels a little too close and a little too redundant. And I am concerned about 1,200 cars an evening to the neighbors. That's all. Looks like it's going to pass, but those are
Tom?
my concerns.
I fully support it.
So anyways, motion, discussion,
Can I just real quick, sorry.
oh,
More
yes.
just, I will say, Shirley, you may not be the only dissenting, more because I agree, like, it is a wonderful event. It is a lot of traffic. And I guess I'm more going to, because the public is not here, so I'm just more reflecting on when we were talking about the racing and the feedback we got. And I know there was a lot about the sound, and that will not be should not be the case of projecting sound, but to say there wouldn't be any sound, I think is a bit naive, right? You've got cars driving down, got a lot of traffic issues on that road, and so it's a lot of impact on one neighborhood for some very big events this year. I'm stalling. 'Cause and there's pros and cons on this one for sure. I'm more wanting to verbalize I don't think this is an easy one, and I think it would be naive to think that this is just an all-win, because
and
I do think it's
Truly,
a
it
lot.
was difficult for me because in general, I support anything the Farmers Club does to stay solvent because they're excellent neighbors, but I'm not sure. A light show is it's not even close enough to country music for an agricultural use to me.
I guess a question to the applicant, is this something that you're anticipating year in, year out?
We would look to make it an annual tradition, if everything is successful, both for, the fair, ourselves, and for the community. And one thing to note about the vehicle traffic, when we operated last year too, it's primarily around the holiday time that is the heavier, consumption. And in talking with the police at the meeting, we start off at 800 cars and assess traffic. So the number we put in is what we anticipate as a maximum number on a given night if all parameters work well. But it's a work in progress to make sure that, internally and externally, the traffic pattern works. So then that's why we, strongly urge the time ticketing, is so that we can, pace that out and learn from it. Same as the events that we opened last year, we started off at a lower number and increased, as we went, once we felt that we were comfortable doing it. So it's not a boom on opening night where we're committed to 1,200 cars. It's, we assess it based on, that's what we feel with the design and the layout, what we can maximize comfortably, but we start at the 800 and work from that.
Is there a discount for Cumberland residents? I'm just kidding, kind of.
I think there's, that.
Short answer is yes, we did that at one of our other events also.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
When the Cumberland Farmers Club first got this information, I mean, we looked it over pretty heavily, and Secretary Liz, she called some of the other areas that had the event, and to check, make sure what EJ was telling us had happened, and it's something that I was very pleased to hear, that it wasn't out of the ordinary if some of the roads got bad, or if they had to make an improvement. As he said, during the event, they made it. I mean, at one site, they spent $30,000 on gravel to improve the site immediately because it started to get a little bit muddy or something like that. So certainly, EJ and Fiesta shows they don't hold back when it's time. If something's got to be adjusted or fixed right, they fix it and fix it right, and keep the event moving. So I just let that know.
I have reservations also. I am going to vote for it, but I do have reservations for it, and without having compelling testimony to vote against it, I think the burden is on the applicant to make this work and make it work for the neighborhood, because if it doesn't, you won't have to worry about coming back next year.
And to that point, you're 100% right. We operate about 60 events throughout Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. And our longest standing relationship is 69 years, and we have many that go over 30. Over 50% of our events are 30-plus year relationships. So we strive to be a good neighbor, because we're always on someone else's property and in someone else's community.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion? Any further before the vote? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 21068, to accept an application from the Grange at Longwoods for a contract zone agreement and allow them to continue through the contract zoning.
Got it backwards?
I got it backwards.
Item before, finance.
Right for you.
Ah, well, there you go. I'll hold my wrist out, you can slap it. 21067, in fact, I'm reading the motions instead of the agenda. Okay, I can be replaced at any time.
No, thank you, no.
To hear a report from the finance director regarding preliminary end-of-year financials. My apologies.
Good evening, council. So last week, we met with the Finance Committee, and we actually went over where we expect to be for year end. These numbers are preliminary. Obviously, we haven't quite closed the year, but figured it would be best if we can at least give you a heads up on where we're going to land and what we want to do with some year-end numbers. So overall, the general fund did very well as far as revenues. We're expecting to be about $1 million above budget on our revenues, and those are mainly due to our motor vehicle collections as well as our state revenue share, which was completely unexpected. In regards to the expenses, which I have before you, after considering what we anticipate to get through the end of year, you know, this is done weeks prior to this meeting, so even though we're days away from year end, I had to project at that point, what we look like for year end. So when we take into consideration some of the payrolls that we still had to enter from the actuals and some other miscellaneous expenses that we anticipate through the end of the year, we still expect to be about $350,000 to $380,000 below budget on the expense side. So on the revenues, we're going to exceed budget by about $1 million, and on our expense side, we're anticipating to be under budget by about $350,000 to $380,000. I'm going to try and make this a bit bigger. So with that being said, when we ended the fiscal year for 2020, we were at a 10.5% fund balance. When we take into consideration where we anticipate our revenues to be and our expenses to be, we anticipate that we can, after year-end transfers, which you see before you, we expect to be at 11.1% fund balance. These were items that were brought forward in Finance Committee and reviewed also and discussed in regards to during the budget process, whether or not we wanted a budget at the end of the budget in the new year for them, or determine what our year end was going to look like and take it from that. This is just a form to kind of show you where the money would go with all the year-end transfers. So you have a better understanding of where we're moving the funds to in regards to what those transfers look like. And the last part of the presentation is merely to discuss where our policy is to be at a 12% fund balance, and we've discussed over the years how we were planning on working towards that, and this pretty much is we had a discussion with Finance Committee on what that plan looks like to get us to 12%, where we would step into it so it wouldn't be a burden in any year for our financial, to get our revenues or our fund balance to 12% of our revenues. So the estimate is to get there by the end of 2023 to get us to 12%. And again, fund balance is for cash flow purposes. It prevents us from having to take out tax anticipation notes so that we can pay for operations as we move along through the fiscal year.
I think the one thing I just would add to that, as Helene explained to the Finance Committee last week, was that while we are recommending transfer into these reserve accounts with end-of-year fund balance, it still requires your authorization to spend the money. So basically, it's sitting in our checking account in different silos, if you will, for specific projects, but that project cannot be authorized without your authorization. So it does require another review, another public hearing to actually spend that money.
Thanks, Bill.
Tom was our chair of the Finance Committee, and Tom, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I personally think Bill Stiles, are you okay with this? Okay. Because Bill Stiles always wants us to get to a higher fund balance. And we've accomplished as best as we can. And as Allison pointed out, we can and we can't. It just depends on what time of the year it is. And after we pay for the school, it happens. And by the way, Mark, thank you for joining the Finance Committee.
My pleasure, thank you.
You brought some good questions up. So that's all I have to say.
We've got a large audience, so that gives me the opportunity to just pontificate for just a second. So one of the reasons that we want to carry a fund balance is that we send out a tax bill twice a year. Some of you write the check and put it right back in the mail. Some of you are like me and let it sit there for a while and, don't rush off to send the money back in. So what happens is the school sends us a bill every month, and we look to be able to pay that. And when we don't have the money, we have times in the past have had to go borrow the money, or a tax anticipation note, if I think it's the correct phrase to use that. So the idea is that by carrying a fund balance, and this is what the prudent people tell us, that you should be carrying a certain amount. And one of that is we want to be able to fund an emergency purchase if for some reason we needed a dump truck or a fire truck or a repaired roof in a building or some kind of catastrophe. It's nice to be able to have some kind of a cushion there. So you could look around some of the other communities. South Poland carries a significant fund balance. Some communities don't. The schools district is limited by state law on how much they can carry. Municipalities work under a little bit different rules. So one of the reasons for carrying a fund balance is to be able to pay our bills and anticipate them. We send out a bill twice a year. We pay our bills every month like everybody else. Anybody else? Tom?
Helene, when you make the motion, and I guess I'll make the motion, that we need to transfer the fund balance as well, correct? The fund balances as well? Is that going to be part of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. And I'd like to make a motion.
Tom?
I move to accept the finance report and year-end transfers as presented by the Finance Committee.
Second.
Second by Mark.
Bob, just a procedural question. If during tonight's meeting, we have an item that comes up, we need to spend more money than we have budgeted so far, are we planning on taking this, maybe you can answer, Allison, are we going to plan on taking that out of these reserves? And if so, do we need to hold off this vote until we determine? Does that make sense?
Yep, so actually, what's being presented, correct me if I'm wrong, is actually the full amount
Okay.
that we're voting on later
All right.
this evening.
Thank you. Hey, quick question, how is excise tax still strong?
Very strong.
We've exceeded our budget over the last 3 years, or what we actually collected the last 3 years. That's why we were very surprised in seeing where we are right now.
Thank you.
Shirley?
I know a lot of people are in the room for the next item on the agenda, And I just wanted to point out, because I'm not sure could you put up the slide that does the less transfers for that side? If you look down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, it says CIP roads quiet zone. So when this item went on the agenda, I know when Sally called me and I was like, the bids came in higher than we had budgeted for. And I said, I'm not sure where we'll get the money. And at that point, I didn't know this because I'm not on the finance committee. So if I've called you all out tonight for no reason and this passes without much discussion, I apologize. But I was very glad to see that number in there. So that's, a lot of people wonder how you pay for things, and this is one way we get to decide how to pay for things.
Any further
Thank you.
discussion from any member of the public wish to comment? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Unanimous. Thank you.
There goes our crowd.
See if I can get the right piece of paper in front of me here now. To consider and act on starting the contract zone agreement process pursuant to the CZA flowchart. The Ordinance Committee met with a gentleman whose name escapes me right now, which we'll hear from in a moment, regarding a piece of property on Longwoods Road. Most of us are familiar with it.
Valachi's.
Malachi. Anyways, there's a proposal in front of us that was moved forward by the Ordinance Committee for a contract zone. And before I muddy the waters, I'm just going to pass this on to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex is here tonight, the owner of the project and one of the primary investors, to talk about this project, and I don't think anybody does it better. So, Alex, if you wouldn't mind coming up and just sharing your vision. I'll show you first while he comes up to the mic. Come on up. So, this is the project that's basically on Longwoods Road. It's one of the scenic vistas here in town. If you're driving to town in the evening, you probably notice the deer basically eating out in the big open field. And Alex has a proposal for you tonight that would require a change in our zoning to bring forward what he refers to as the Grange at Longwoods. And all your information is right there, so feel.
Sure. Well, thank you for letting me get in front of the town council, and so I'll jump right in. So 76 Longwoods Road is the official address. It's 60 acres, and what I'm proposing is that we put at least 52 of that 60 acres into permanent conservation. And so I think that hopefully has a benefit to the community in and of itself. But this project is going to be a little bit more than that. And it seeks to have a working farm that will hopefully utilize the existing farmhouse and the barn. And as most people in Cumberland know, having a working farm is a tough business to make work. So in addition to that working farm, we want to have 3 miles, at least 3 miles of walking trails on the property. Those walking trails would mostly be in the woods, so they wouldn't take up the valuable farmland. And on the walking trails, we plan to put a sculpture garden. Then the final piece of this is back behind where the existing barn is, we plan to build a Grange Hall, and inside the Grange Hall, it would be a reasonably small structure. We're targeting something under 4,000 square feet total. And in that Grange Hall, we would put a small farm-to-table family-style restaurant. And at this point, most people, including the town council, is probably scratching their head of, why are you doing so many things on the same piece of property? And that's exactly the point of this project. If you think about a working farm, feeding people, people enjoying nature, people enjoying art, people enjoying acoustic music inside the pub, they all go together. They are all synergistic. And in a day where local culture that's understated and authentic is hard to find, I think this could be one of the more iconic but understated kinds of places to visit. And I believe enough in it that, you know, I'm putting a great deal of money at risk. And as Bill can tell you, part of, you know, a great deal of that money is just, is in the form of a donation to fund the 52 acres that's going to go into permanent conservation. So that's kind of an overview of the project. I know it's a lot to wrap your head around, but long story short, think of it, the property as a kind of a cultural Grange Hall and park for the 21st century. So hopefully that's a handy overview. Quite a bit of the project description is in print, but there are some pictures of the kind of architecture we're looking for. I do have some extra copies in paper. If some people from the Cumberland residents want to take some home with them, we could probably get those to you. And the town council, I believe, all has a copy. Moving forward, I think there are some pictures in here. So this page, this is the existing farmhouse. And the beauty of this property is that the existing farmhouse is a natural for a resident farmer at a reasonable cost to inhabit that. So if you can give an existing farmhouse and a barn to a resident farmer at a reasonable cost, and that working farm has a built-in place to sell the produce from that farm to the Grange Hall restaurant, that makes it a lot easier for that working farm to be viable. The other thing is that we think there'll be a fair amount of foot traffic on this property because people will come there to walk the trails, to see the sculpture, to visit, you know, stop by for a bowl of soup or a glass of wine or one of Portland, Maine's famous IPA beers, of which there's 32 microbrews in the greater Portland area. And all of that foot traffic is going to be great for the local farmer because when there is a little kiosk already on the property, that will be a great little farm stand for the farmer. So again, it gets back to this concept of synergy. All of these different uses support each other. A couple of unique features about the actual physical aspects of the property is that the farmhouse and the barn are at least 1,000 feet off the road, and the proposed Grange Hall will even be further than that. And I think all of these structures are at least 900 feet, in some cases 1,200 feet from our property lines. Our property lines are pretty distant because we have the 450-foot CMP swath. That's a nice buffer to our our southwest of the property, and we have woods between us and our neighbor to the north of us. So it's a very isolated property, and I think things like sound are, after talking with 2 or 3 engineers, sound, I don't want to be, I think it will not be an issue. I think the sound will be unnoticeable at the property lines. So let me see if I can find another picture or two that might give you. This structure is bigger than we want, but it's certainly the architecture style we're seeking. This is about a mile from where I live in Scarborough, and this is an example of a farm that has introduced this is the well at Jordan Farm in Cape Elizabeth, and they have, in the big building that's kind of in the foreground, they have a kitchen, and they serve farm-to-table food in these little cupola-style things, and it's been quite successful. So that is a little bit of a model for what we're looking for. There's another structure. I think this is up at Topsail Farm in Waldoboro. That's more of an event space, but that's probably more of a scale of the structure we're thinking of.
English Pond.
Yep, yep. And so that, that gives you a sense of the architecture and the site plan. Again, it's pretty unique to have these structures so far off the road and so far removed from our property lines and from neighbors. The other reason to preserve this land is the rear property line. Part of the rear property line is the headwaters of the Piscataqua River, which is a valuable watershed area. And, a developer might put 12 houses on this property, which is not going to help the pristine watershed area that the Piscataqua River needs to be. So it's a good alternative. And that's a little bit of a close-up of our sketch plan. And in the worst-case scenario, I've thought a lot about how we certainly don't want to be a bad neighbor. We think we're going to be a great neighbor. And we just think we're going to be a neighbor, except for some extra cars are going to be on the property. I think life will go on in this neighborhood as it always has. And the traffic on Route 9, which is Longwoods Road, we feel can easily handle the amount of traffic that this site is going to attract. So I think that's a pretty decent overview, and I look forward to questions and working with the town council.
Mr. Chairman. Tonight, I just want to remind everybody at home and to the council and the audience here tonight that this is only one step in a very multitude-layered process that we put together many years ago. This is actually the first step. The Ordinance Committee has reviewed the application with the applicant, has had a similar presentation, and has basically forwarded it to you to start the process. And the process requires multiple meetings with the neighborhood. The second one will be with the planning board and the council. And then we will look at a contract zone agreement that the council will put their input on after meeting with the neighbors and the planning board. Then we'll bring it back to you for a public hearing so that you can recommend sending it to the planning board for an actual formal public hearing. They will hold their public hearing and then finally send it back to you for approval with their recommendations, either positive or negative. So there are a multitude of steps in this process, and this is only the very beginning. In your packet and online as well is the review by the town planner required by ordinance that basically confers that this is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, and it's really at the starting gate. So tonight, either the process goes through the application process as our flow chart, if you will, or it basically dies right here, and that's totally up to you tonight.
I was going to ask that we put the cursor back onto the flow charts so that people could look at that, and there. Shirley?
I just wanted to point out to the council that we don't always have something come to the ordinance committee before we bring it to the council. But the manager was concerned that with the $2,000 application fee, if there wasn't some sort of interest in this project or support for this project, then we shouldn't be asking the applicant for $2,000. But at this point, they've paid and they've decided. We gave them some feedback at the ordinance committee meeting. My question was, why doesn't this just fit with farm-based retail? And it's kind of tricky. It didn't quite, according to the managers and the town planner's assessment, pass the straight face for farm-based retail, because it's a little bit more. It involves art, and it involves trails. And I'd like to also note that the Cumberland and Shebig Land Trust came to the meeting in support of this project. So, Mr. Manager, the flow chart.
Yeah, so we're at a crossroads, and sorry for being an engineer, it's a curse, it's a curse. But right now, we're here, and if it's accepted, we basically start the process, which starts all the public meetings, all which will be advertised, all which will have input from the neighbors. And again, I think Alex laid out the vision very clearly. I think this doesn't even include the site plan review that will be required by the by the project as it moves forward as well, for traffic and drainage and noise and all the things we do under our site plan ordinance. This is just to change the zoning, because as you know, when we do a contract zone, it's a brand-new piece of our ordinance. It becomes its ordinance all by itself, and that's what we have to decide if it's worth going forward tonight. So I think Alex couldn't do any.
Bill, could you tell us what the zone currently is?
I believe it's RR1, which is a 4-acre minimum zone. Also in the report, Land for Maine's Future, as well as Maine Farmland Trust, is also very interested in this project to preserve the agriculture component of this, which is no small part, is a very big piece of this. So I think our scenic vistas are going to be preserved. I think the agricultural piece is being preserved. And the nice thing is that the pub will basically have on-site the materials and crops that it needs to support it. So it's kind of almost a full circle type of process. But I wish we had allowed some of these type of things when we were looking at the farm-based retail, but the town attorney, as well as the town planner and the code officer, not without some significant changes to that ordinance could we really let it fall under that umbrella of farm-based retail.
Tom, did you have?
No, what's that?
So, I'd like to have a motion to move this for further discussion. Would anybody like to take a stab at this?
Surely will.
I move to accept the application from the Grange at Longwoods for a contract zone agreement and allow them to continue through the CZA process.
Second it.
Motion moved and seconded. Some discussion. Mark?
I have a question about the parking that you mentioned. Where do we envision cars parking? How many cars do we envision as part of this process?
So, it will be a fairly small Grange Hall, but we think we want to keep the disturbed acreage under 1 acre. And so we would like to get as many parking spaces but not exceed that 1 acre. And I think that curtails the maximum amount of parking spaces we could get was maybe 70, Joe, or something like that? 37 to 50 cars. So that's a natural way to control the amount of traffic on this. So.
Will those cars be parked kind of in the property more, or
Yeah, there
by
is a
Longwoods?
schematic that kind of shows it. It'll be, I don't think the way, when we landscape it, you won't even be able to see the cars once they're parked.
From Longwoods?
From Longwoods.
Gotcha, okay.
It'll be back, there's a little bluff, and then The parking area will be behind that bluff, and it'll be landscaped.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yep.
So, conversation with the town manager the other day, and we're talking about what the community looks like and how that varies on your perspective. And my idea of what a rural community looks like and somebody else's idea what a rural community looks like can vary on your perspective. And so, again, Ronnie Brown sitting here in the audience, and his idea of what a rural community looked like when he grew up, who was a young fella, is vastly different. But the thing that I think we can all appreciate is the desire to retain some semblance of what that looks like, and how we as a community move that forward differently than other communities, and why that makes this still a desirable place to live and stay. And so certainly, I'd love to see this stay just the way it is, but I think this is an opportunity that is what we want to see for people that come forward with development plans for our town, and I think this is a great project. Has a lot of potential, and so I look forward with moving the process forward. I think it will bring something to us. Ronnie?
I just have a question of the applicant, and maybe the manager. You said the entire parcel is 60 acres, is that correct?
That's correct.
And out of that 60 acres, you said 8 of it would remain and 52 of it would be in a conservation easement?
Yes, that's the current plan, yes.
Okay. How much of that property is still taxable, Bill? Would it all, the entire 60 acres, or are we talking 8 acres?
It depends how it ends up. I think a lot of it now is in a conservation easement,
Right.
or in tree growth, or agriculture.
That's what
So
I
there-
figured.
It may not be much difference between the two models.
and
I
that's-
think this one could be actually more.
And that's where I'm trying to get at is, I mean, I know that they're in farm area now and, to try to protect themselves. And I'm just curious where it would end up in the future, so.
Yeah, depending too if they form a nonprofit, there's a whole bunch of issues that I don't want to basically set ourselves up, but, as presented, it would probably result in more taxable revenue than it does today.
Right now.
But that's not a guarantee for the future.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I think it also would create about 15 jobs if the project is successful, which I think is in keeping with the comprehensive plan, and I do encourage you to, the comprehensive plan for this zone seems like I think it's understated to say it's a good fit. And Carla Nixon did some pretty good homework, and I encourage you to read that piece.
This is a motion for us to move something forward. Does anybody from the public have any questions or comments?
Hi, I'm Bill Perkins. I'm here actually for the next measure, and was here completely by surprise on this. I am the neighbor to the north that he just referred to there, and I have to say that the concept of what he's doing here is quite impressive. I like what I'm hearing, but I was here predominantly to make sure that the quiet zone went forward, and I would like to make sure that as we look towards the south, that we're not causing a new source of noise for the neighborhood in a ways that would, he talked about the power line between us, and it's absolutely there. It's us, also between us and the country club. and we hear the country club when they have parties. And I'd like to be sure that, you know, I'm encouraged to hear that the neighbors will be included in this whole process. I'd like to make sure that the notice gets out so that we're not on vacation when that happens. I don't have any negative thoughts. I love the idea that we're trying to keep the nature of our town the way it is. I just hope that we can do that in a way that doesn't disturb those of us who are already there.
Anybody else from the public?
I just wanted to respond to him.
Shirley.
As you pointed out, there are many, well, there's a neighborhood meeting and many other public hearings on the matter. But the interesting thing about contract zone agreements is, unlike regular zoning, you can be intensely specific. So if he decides he wants to plant a particular kind of crop along your property line, and you don't think that's a good idea for that kind of crop to grow, contract zones can be that particular. So I encourage and invite you to participate in the neighborhood discussions, because that's the benefit of a contract zone agreement.
I believe we have a motion and a second. And seeing no further discussion, I would move it to a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. I thought they were here to see us, but apparently they're not. Public is here for something else. To award the contract for railroad crossing barriers at Greely Road, Tuttle Road, and Longwoods Road to Storey Brothers. So this has been a multi-year process. Construction costs have gone through the roof. Everybody knows that. Anybody's been out to, I love the one that says, buy a lobster, cheaper than a 2x4. I guess that's kind of what this railroad crossing looks like. There's a lot of 2x4s lined up. We had 2 bids for the work, and the Storey Brothers were the low bidder. I think I'll just ask the town manager if there's some extraneous information here the public should know about it before we move ahead with it.
I think you covered it, Mr. Chair. I think we don't believe it's going to be any cheaper in the years to come. I know there has been some change or some delay in the sale of Pan Am Railroad. The National Railroad Board basically put on hold the sale currently, but we believe that will resurface, and it will be up for sale again in the next 6 to 18 months. So I don't think any of the circumstances have changed, and I don't believe we'll see anything in the way of any big discounts in the next few years.
Let's have a motion, put this thing to the...
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. Mr. Chairman, I move to award the contract for the railroad crossing barriers at Greely Road, Tuttle Road, and Longwoods Road to Storey Brothers as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion on the motion. So the contract awarded amount is $277,050. It is significantly over what we had anticipated. I think Shirley laid out why we carry a contingency and why we want to carry that at a 12%, and based on our savings in our budget this year and expenses and a little more revenue coming in, we're moving forward with this project. And anybody else have anything to add?
I think you hit it right on the head, Bob, when you said that it's not gonna get any cheaper. If we don't do it now, it's just gonna cost more money down the road. And, I mean, there is a huge difference between the price of the 2 bids. So, I think we'll get what we pay for, and they always do good work, so.
I've said before, I'll sound like a broken record, but I hate spending the taxpayers' money. But this is a quality of life. And every day, I'm lucky, I'm a mile away. And I hear it and hear it and hear it. I can't imagine living next to it. And for the residents around and near those crossings, I hope this is their, at least on these crossings, this is their final relief. And I couldn't support this more.
Just a couple things, just because we've said it, but just to like crystallize it. Yes, this came in more. I think one big piece that the finance committee discussed was about, number one, that if we didn't do it now, not only do we not anticipate significant reduction in construction costs, because even if the market comes down, you have general inflation to counteract anyways. And then the guidance that was given is that as the sale goes through, the requirements by the new owner would be significantly more as well. And so while this feels like we are adding an extra 100,000 than we anticipated, the expectation would be that we would be required to do even more, and therefore have to spend not only more due to cost of materials, but the actual requirements would be different. Just another question that came up during the finance committee too was recognition that this is for the 3 crossings and that we are hoping to be able to work through the process and be able to do something at Muirfield. So I guess I will just throw out there that the anticipation is that it is not going to be another $100,000 for Muirfield. If we take this 300 and divide by 3, that it's 100,000 per crossing. Actually, the safety systems that are in place at the Muirfield crossing will most likely actually meet the requirements. So while we haven't gotten the official word, the anticipation is that it would be minimal enhancements needed to be made at that crossing. So we are not anticipating another $100,000 investment at that crossing.
On the capital cost,
Yes.
the big issue is the legal cost because of the private status of the crossing. And
Yep.
that may require our state delegation to assist us with resolution of that process.
I'm hesitant to offer this to the public. You've been so good. But does anyone like to speak to this matter before we hold a vote? See someone getting up.
Again, Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road. On this project, one thing that a question I have, and again, I'm not that knowledgeable, so this may be a dumb question, but we've got a bid for $450,000 and one for $277,000. What if the guy that's $277,000 is wrong and he has to go way over? What do we do about that? What happens? Do we hold him to it?
If you're familiar with municipal bids or
I'm not.
contracts in general, you're beholden to hold up your end of the bargain. So I would expect that anybody that signs his name to this knows the implications of what the expectations are. I don't foresee any inability for the contractor to complete this job for the price quoted.
Bob, as the council knows, that any project that's over $100,000 in the state of Maine is required to have a performance and payment bond. So basically, that bond is for the entire cost of the project to complete. So if that contractor defaulted on the project, the bonding company would come in and basically complete that project. So every contract we do have has performance and payment bonds, so we don't fall into that trap that you described. Because it would be simple if the guy walked away and said, hey, I don't want to touch it, and, but that's not the case here.
So we've got a bid for 277, but we're setting aside 300,000.
That's correct.
So we might spend 300,000?
If we get into contingencies that are not addressed in the contract documents. Anything that's built in the contract documents has to be paid for by the contract price.
Okay, so the contingencies, what if they go over the 300,000? Does that go back to the bond situation?
That goes back to the contractor. The contractor, if he does the contract as specified, as designed, he is on the hook he will only get paid for the amount that he bid.
Yep. And no matter how much crying, we don't help him?
If it's outside the scope of the project, we can't.
He's a local company, correct?
Correct.
North Yarmouth?
Cumberland.
Cumberland, that's in Cumberland?
That's on Middle
Okay,
Road,
yep.
Storey Brothers. Yep.
No, oh, this is Storey Brothers. I'm thinking of the guy over on Dowdy Road. Yep. All right, good. Thank you.
I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimous. Thank
One
you.
abstention, Bob.
One second. Oh, that's right.
I have my annual lobster in July from the Storey Brothers Company Party.
I hope you get a
It's my bribe.
Sally, your
No, I
motion,
need a
your
2x4
motion
now.
passed. Would you like to say something?
I would like to say something for maybe the two people that are new. My husband and I are Ron and Sally Brown, and we have the misfortune of having the railroad tracks go through our house. And we've lived here in town all of our life. But what I really wanted to say is that we would like to thank our neighbors, friends, family, the Cumberland residents, and even some of the Falmouth residents down at the golf course for attending our Quiet Zone meetings that we've had at the house. And then for attending the town council meetings, obviously numerous times. It was a really dedicated group and a team effort. Thank you sounds. Thank you sounds pretty inadequate, but that's all I can do is thank all the people that are here with us tonight and thank all of you that stood behind us and helped us. And I would like to thank Mr. Shane and all the counselors who've worked with us these last few years and helped finally get this passed. I do have one question. How long before it will actually take?
Well, we started in 2011.
I know.
No, in
That's
fairness.
10 years ago.
Sally, I think you forget the part of the story that is really, I think, more interesting to me is that the folks on Greely Road really weren't supportive the first time around this came through. It wasn't until the entire forest got wiped out, the sound barriers that were up there before, that all of a sudden it was, oh my gosh, they're in my kitchen. And it was incredible the impact it had on the Browns. And if you sat on their property and saw it, it was unbelievable. So we cannot start before, I think, the third week in July. I think the Storey Brothers are tentatively scheduled to start landing there near the end of this month, and it should go fairly quickly. There isn't a lot of work to do. There's a lot of coordination, and most of that coordination is with the railroad and the ability of them to have a flagger there. And a flagger is different than you and I think about it in the construction world. A flagger in the railroad world is just somebody that sits at the tracks to say, the train is coming in 3 minutes. He has a radio, he has a call. He knows when the train is coming to clear the area for the construction companies. And those flaggers are hard to get because they're working all over the place. So that's been the biggest coordination that we face with this project. The work itself could be done in a week, 2 weeks. I think Ron had a conversation, and that's what was conveyed to him. But it's the coordination and the availability of the other subs, paving included. They're also pretty stretched. We hope to have it done sometime this summer and prior to school opening.
I have a question. Somebody brought it up to me here within the last few days. Is there something that can be done because they clear cut us. They started at Greely Road and they clear cut all the way out to behind our garage. I mean, just clear cut, as clear as this room is here. But I had somebody tell me that there's something to do with the, some kind of a tree program that the town has, and they didn't know if there was a way that there could be some donations from that.
The railroad can cut every stick inside their right-of-way without any permission from the town of Cumberland or in any town. They are essentially at a higher level of authority than we are. We can reach out to the DOT for some assistance, but they haven't been a ton of help in this process either. As you know, when these rails came through and we tried to ask them just to fix the crossings, you know, you think we were asking them for their, you know, their firstborn child, but they just wouldn't do anything, the railroad or the DOT. So I am not confident. I'd be happy to ask, and the folks that deal with this is the Northern New England Passenger Rail Association, call themselves NEPRA. That's the group that I would reach out to. I'd be happy to do that. I'll copy you on the email, Sally, and we'll try. But I can tell you to date, we've had no success.
The clear cutting really has
Huge.
it's been, there's no words for it.
We'll have aerial photographs probably by fall or early next spring, and we'll be able to show what happened pretty clearly to DOT, and I'd love to have those as part of our argument, if you will, because it's going to be pretty obvious where your house is today and what it looked like a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because it's fairly significant.
The other thing I think that I would like to reiterate, because we've had numerous people ask, Ron and I, some of the neighbors that are at the railroad tracks, is, you know, why did we build beside of the tracks? Well, when we built there 50 years ago, there were 2 trains, one in the morning, came back at night. That was it. How did we or anybody else that's close to the railroad tracks ever think there would be such a resurrection of both freight and the Amtrak? And from what I was told with a phone call Friday, talking to an official down at Pan Am in Massachusetts, was that there's a lot of money flowing into Washington right now, and it's flowing in for the Pan Am. And she told me point blank that they're talking about extending the Amtrak to Belfast, Maine. I have no idea what's in Belfast, Maine, but they're gonna extend it. They talked about extending it into Lewiston and Auburn, and they actually, and you probably know this, they actually talked about extending it to Sugarloaf. At least at Sugarloaf, there'll probably be people take it in the middle of the winter. And so it's only gonna get worse.
Well, this crossing, these 3 miles of track between essentially the Cumberland-Yarmouth line and into Falmouth was nearly $14 million of federal money. So, and we had essentially no choice other than to say, let us know when we could shut the road down and we'll work with you. So that's been our participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sally.
Do we say out loud that you still might hear a train horn?
You know, it's actually up to the conductor.
Right. I think that's important. I don't want folks to think that anything's gone wrong, that at the end of the day, what we are investing in and making the change for is that it is no longer required to blow the horn. It is still up to the conductor's discretion if they feel there's a safety reason that they have to blow the horn. So we'll be on the same schedule, but I think that's important to say out loud for folks, that you may still hear a train horn.
Allison has a good point, thank you.
All right. Item 21 is -070. Thank you all for coming. to order the abatement of a malfunctioning wastewater system at property identified as map R03-Lot 38, to authorize the town manager or code enforcement officer to abate the same if necessary, is authorized by 30-AMRS something 3248.
Subsection.
That's what that little curly Q is? Thank you. All right. So if you've read this in your packet, you'll understand that we have a failed septic system on a home that is of, I guess you could say that this is the town picking up the, carrying the weight, if you will. This is a public health issue. It is it's a service being extended to a neighbor.
A long-term neighbor that's been in this town for 70-plus years, so.
Well, we're facilitating the process.
Exactly.
And I just want to say, just to be careful of choosing words, that we are basically, will be placing a lien on the property, and we will be able to cash in on the lien upon sale or transfer of the property. So this is not something that's unusual. This is something that has been done before in basically every area in town. And because it is a health issue, our code officer has been involved. He has inspected the property, has agreed with it. This is probably some of the worst soils that we have in the town of Cumberland. If you know your wastewater systems, it's called a 9E. I think it may be the worst classification of soils available. So it'll be an expensive repair, but it also is a health concern in an area of town that we basically have no public water. So it is important that we move forward, and we are prepared to work with the family involved to have this rectified and begin fairly soon in the restoration of the septic system.
So this is a stone bed, Bill. This is not a chambered system, so, I mean, the soils aren't that bad.
Oh, they're bad. It's going to be a mound system built almost on top of the land.
Is this one of your famous marine clays?
Yeah,
soil
9E is next to the
situations?
worst, described to me today by the code officer. He said this is bad. This is one of the more difficult systems, and it'll be a mound system, so you'll see a large mound present after it's constructed. So most of the leaching, to your point, Bob, will happen in that mound before it gets down to the native soils. So most of the waste will be almost clean before it hits the high seasonal groundwater table.
I would have expected it had been a chambered system myself.
I think the existing system is 50-plus years old.
Yeah.
To call it a system is a bit of a stretch. So it's pretty much what they did 50, 60 years ago. And fortunately, up till now, we haven't really have had a failure, and now the plumbing is failing internally in the building. So we really need to act on it.
Let's have a motion so we can bring this to discussion, please.
I'll give you a motion, Mr. Chairman. I move to order the abatement of a malfunctioning wastewater system at property identified as map R03 Lot 38, and to authorize the town manager or code enforcement officer to abate the same if necessary, as authorized by 30 AMRSA 3248.
Anybody care to second?
I'll second it.
Tom? I don't have any problem with this application. I have no problem with the cause and the remedy. And I think that it's as the town manager has explained to us, the investment is necessary, and we will see a payback at some point. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I'm familiar with this. This is a lady that's lived in town her entire life. She grew up on the Corey Farm, which is now the Wormel Farm, and has lived in the vicinity her entire life. This gives her the ability to remain in her house for the rest of her life. And I think she's been a model citizen to this town, and I think it's great that we can help her out so that she can continue to live in her home, so.
I will gladly support this. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Next item is 21-071, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a liquor license application for Cumberland House of Pizza. This was before us last meeting for explanation. It is not a new application, it is not a new business, it's more or less a housekeeping matter for a pause in sales because of COVID last year. I don't know if there's any need for,
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any public comment? Call for a vote. All in favor?
One abstention, Bob.
One exception.
Did they give you?
Motion
lobster?
carries.
Same problem Shirley has.
Pizza, though.
I don't get free food.
2x4 for you, too.
She gets lobster, I get pizza, so.
All right. Item 21072, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on amendments to the Cumberland zoning ordinance, Section 315-6, rural residential districts, Section 315-7, low-density residential districts, Section 315-8, medium-density residential districts, 315-9, village medium-density residential district, to increase the maximum number of children allowed in daycare centers and nursery schools from 20 to a maximum of 50, subject to site plan review, and Section 315-47, as recommended by the planning board. So there was a consideration given to enlarge some of our daycare centers, and the initial response was to carry it from 20 to 40, and then the planning board recognized that the state benchmark was 50, so we changed it, or they changed it to 50. If I understand the application, there is still public input on all of these aspects. And Bill, is there anything that you would like to add here?
Yeah, one of the things the planning board struggled with was the fact that in many cases, and I think there may be six daycares that this might even apply to in town, that why would they want to hear the application again if there was physically no change to the land? So the building didn't change, the parking didn't change, hours of operation, nothing really changed. And we posed the question to the town attorney. The town attorney said, yes, in fact, they would have to reapply to the planning board to amend their original site plan approval to go from 20 to whatever the number their state licensure allowed. She claimed that this would allow for public input to the change. There may be something that the planning board was unaware of that has changed or could change, and that anyone could challenge that application if they just arbitrarily increased it. because we were considering trying to do it internally with staff review, and she recommended against it. She recommended basically having the planning board review the application, so abutters could be heard. So was the one piece that the planning board wrestled with. The town attorney weighed in, said, absolutely, it has to go back to the planning board if the numbers want to increase. I'm not sure what you bring back to the planning board if that happens, especially in a couple of cases we've heard that there really wouldn't be any physical change to the building, to the footprint, to the parking, so they're asking us, what do we want to bring back? And I basically have told them, if there's no change, then just bring back, the only thing that's changed is the number. And the planning board can hold a public hearing, and then they can weigh the options and deliberate on that. So hard thing for me is where we're a land use based judicial board, I'm not sure what I'm sending to the planning board to review if there's nothing that is physically changed. But regardless, it's required. We'll move forward, and we'll try to facilitate that process so that the neighbors and the abutters are notified. And as you know, our new zone now is not 200 feet, but 500 feet for notification. So more neighbors will be notified and can participate in that process in the future.
All right, so let's have a motion, please.
I'll give you a motion. I move to amend the zoning, Cumberland zoning ordinance, section 315-6, rural residential districts, section 315-7, low-density residential district, section 315-8, medium-density residential district, 315-9, medium residential district, to increase the maximum number of children allowed at daycare centers and nursery schools from 20 to a maximum of 50, subject to site plan review in section 315-47 as recommended by the planning board.
Second.
So I think this is an important change. In particular, the ability for the planning board to look at this as an expansion of use. As Bill said, there may not be any physical changes, but certainly there are some changes that, as an abutter or as a traffic control measure, people would want to look at. And so I think that going forward, this protects both parties. It allows us to bring the use up to current regulations, and as we know, there is a need for daycares in our community. I'll give somebody else a chance.
I just have a question, Bill. You said they'd have to come back in front of the planning board. There's no fee associated with that.
That was a really good question, because that has come up by the ordinance committee as well. The only fee that we should incur for this process, and it would really be helpful if we changed your motion a little bit, just to basically, one, add the town center district. That was added under the notice of decision that's in your packet. I totally forgot about that. But they added the TCD. The only daycare in the TCD is at the Congregational Church, the two that are there. That would basically cover all our daycares at that point. And that the fee only be to reimburse us for the mailings. It's really just the 500-foot radius mailings we have to do. So that's fairly minimal, but it isn't, I think it's.
And this would only be to within the 500 feet, is that what you're talking?
That's where the
to
mailing would
notify the
go. So in
abutters?
some cases, there might be 6. In some
Right.
cases, there might be 26. But,
Okay.
so you're
And
talking.
public notice, of course,
And I
right? Or
will-
would that
Public
appear in
notice,
the
public
That
notice.
would appear in the planning board agenda, ordinary public notice anyway.
Right, but we do advertise in the Forecaster as well, and we can talk about that. I think that is important to include that as well.
I will amend my motion to add the town center district, if you're okay with it, Tom.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
And
That's
then
fine.
just to cover our cost for whatever
And
the mailing is, that's
To
really all
cover
we're
the
trying.
cost of the mailings, so.
Yep.
Got all of that, Brenda?
Mark?
Yeah, so I received an email from a constituent, I believe an abutter to a potential daycare facility. And he had expressed support for this change, but had some concerns about, I think, the exact issue you were raising, which is if you go from, let's say, 15 kids to 30 all of a sudden, or 50 all of a sudden, and you say, hey, well, now we need a larger area for them to play, let's build this new spot, expand the footprint, that, as I understand, would have to go back through the planning board. I just want to be clear about that we'd have another bite at that apple to review that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That would be like the full-blown site plan review.
Well, it would be an amendment. So the amendment would be for the increase in the area of the footprint, parking, play areas, all those things you described. But also remember, two neighbors side by side could have, under our current ordinance, a 20-person daycare right here and a 20-person daycare on the abutting property with really no changes or really no impact, any different impacts than I think what we're trying to propose. And I think this ordinance gets directly at the issue so that, no one's trying to circumvent the ordinance if you buy an abutting property to basically do what you want to do. So I'm really happy with where this landed. Yeah, I think it's very transparent. I think the planning board kind of landed on the piece that was more about state licensure. The small daycares are licensed at up to 50. Jamie Kiso is here tonight. She helped the planning board with a lot of those questions. Their state license is going to drive a lot of this. I don't see us getting to a lot of these 50-size daycares on the properties we have today. It would require exactly what you say, probably an increase in the square footage. But I think Donna Kane also helped with that. She's been doing this for a long time. Both of them, I think, were a huge asset at the planning board meeting, and I think that's why it's before you the way it is tonight. I think they did a great job, and I think they covered most of the questions the planning board had.
Just, though, I think to Mark's comment, still the same answer, but then to just clarify that even those that they're not making any change to their physical space and are just going to say, hey, I want to go from the 20 to 50. I don't have to. My license allowed me to. I just was capped because of town. What we are doing tonight would also have them come back to the planning board, correct?
It's the notification to the direct abutters and the neighbors. Yeah. And
Saying that.
one of the things that the ordinance committee heard was that if I were a daycare provider and I had 20 kids and, 7 of them had siblings that were at the school, the bus would come by and drop, 1 to 7 off, same bus, doesn't matter how many got off the bus, but they couldn't basically take up a slot of one of those 20 slots for these 7 kids, and they only might be there for a couple hours a day just to provide some aftercare. And I will share with you, our aftercare program through the town is stretched absolutely to the max, and
With a waiting list.
with a waiting list, and we're not sure, how we're going to deal with it because of same issues that the daycares are having, staffing. We just can't find enough people to help. So this is a real issue in front of the parents of our community. I think the daycare providers are looking to provide some relief, and we hope it's temporary, but I believe it's going to be here for the next few years, and without it, I don't know what we do. I don't know what we offer to the parents, because we're not able to do it on the town side because of staffing, and they're not able to do it on the licensure side because of an arbitrary number.
Bob, I think it's important to note that the authorization to have more kids is held by the state. They regulate how many kids are allowed in a particular size building. So even though somebody they may want more kids, the state may not license them. So it's just important to keep, so there's a lot of checks and balances here, and I think this is a good move on our part.
This is a public hearing. I don't think I've said that before. Would anybody from the public, like to speak on this? Yes.
Hi there. So my name is Jamie Storey Kiso, and I am the owner of Storytime Learning Center and Aftercare on Middle Road in Cumberland. And I did approach Mr. Shane in regards to the arbitrary number. We don't know where the number 20 has come from. We're assuming it was based on previous licenses and previous numbers. So since COVID, since last March, 173 programs in the state of Maine have closed. And that includes 4 programs in Cumberland, North Yarmouth, and Falmouth. So this affects over 100 families, in like local families in our area. So what we are hoping to be able to do is our current license, based on our existing building, if we don't change anything in our footprint, we don't change our playground, we don't change anything, our current license from the state allows for 32 children. But the town allows for 20 children based on this number. So the way that the state determines your licensing is square footage per child. So they allow 35, you need to have 35 feet per child. So I know one of the concerns is bringing in really large programs, but it would be based on the footprint of the building. So if there's a cap on the number, that also would determine. But the way that the state does it currently is there are 3 different types of licenses, which I think is important to know. So there is a family child care program, which are basically in-home child care programs. And they are licensed for 3 to 12 children within a residence. So it's within someone's home. And then there's a child care facility, which they have small child care facilities and child care centers, and they are operated at a location other than a residence. And small facilities are 3 to 12 children, and child care centers are 13 or more children. So the state doesn't actually have a cap on the number anymore, but it's based on square footage of your building. And then there's a nursery school, and a nursery school is licensed for 3 or more children between the ages of 33 months and 8 years, but you provide no more than 2 sessions per day, and they cannot exceed 3.5 hours in length. So those don't provide full-day childcare, which is what so many families in our community need right now. They provide a morning program and an afternoon program. And currently, we are aware of 2 family child care programs in West Cumberland, 1 nursery school in Cumberland, and 4 small facilities in Cumberland. So that's all that we have in our area. And for us, we wouldn't be looking at changing the footprint. We also don't expect a large change in traffic flow because so many of our families are siblings. So we're looking at being able to offer preschool to our same family that needs aftercare. So they would be picking up at the same time, they would be dropping off at the same time. But these families, because of the aftercare program in Cumberland having such a large wait list, these families don't have any place to send their kiddos in the fall. So we're just hoping to be able to meet the needs of our current families, and with our licensing numbers, we'd be able to, but with the town ordinance, we're not currently able to. And I think that was pretty much. Just another piece that we have is our drop-off times in the morning vary from 7:30 until 9 o'clock. So it's not that we have everybody coming at 7:30 in the morning or everybody coming, so the traffic flow is throughout the morning. And the same thing with our pickup. We have some kiddos that get picked up after lunchtime, but we also have pickups between 3 and 5:30. So it's not that everybody's coming at the same time, and it's not that we would have a lot of traffic. And the way that our program is set up is we have a turnaround. So families literally come in and drop off their child and so our staff meets them in the driveway. That's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion has been moved and seconded. Discussion has been had. Any final comments?
I just want to go full disclosure. I am going to vote on this one, even though Jamie's my cousin and Donna's my sister. I grilled Jamie from the ordinance seat. Had to put her through the ringer a little bit. But it's not just Jamie's program that's being affected by this change. It's all the programs in our community. And I do see that this is a significant need. I know one of the programs that Jamie talked about being in town is actually relocating. Danielle Hunt is moving from
Right.
Route 9 out to North Yarmouth. So we're actually losing another program in our community. It's a need, and I'm 4 kids, so I'm going to support this.
Well, there you go. All in favor of the motion? Unanimous. Thank you.
There, Donna, now you can vote for me. Donna said she couldn't vote for me because any policy she was interested in, I had to abstain because I was related.
She's useless to you.
That's what
That's what she said.
that's what happens when you come from a big family.
I know.
Now we're related, so maybe I should have abstained.
2 degrees, Ron, 2 degrees.
All right, item 21-073, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on approval of annual vitellers licenses for nonprofit organizations for the period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. So, just as an informational type of thing, the nonprofits that we have typically approved are the Cumberland North Yarmouth Lions Club, Cumberland Soccer Club, Football Boosters, Suburban Little League, West Cumberland United Methodist Church, the 4-H, Mr. Stiles, Tuttle Road Methodist Church, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, and the Cumberland Congregational Church. Anybody else who may come through the door requesting? Moved and seconded. Any discussion by anyone? All in favor of the motion? Carries unanimous. And item 21-074, to hold a public hearing, and apologize for asking the members of the public if there was any comment on that previous item. Got a steep learning curve here. Hold a public hearing to consider and act on, never mind. Town council committee assignments. Everybody has seen this?
Mr. Chairman, I will read them if you wish,
Okay.
being on the Appointments Committee. Aging in Place Committee, Councilor Foster and Gruber. Board of Appeals, Councilor Foster. Coastal Waters Commission, Councilor Gruber, Segrist, and Vale. Historical Society Building Committee, Councilor Grubers and Vale. Housing Authority, Councilor Gruber and Vale. Lands and Conservation Commission, Foster, Gruber, and Segrist. Planning Board, Councilor Gruber and Vale. Prince Memorial Library Advisory Board, Councilor Storey King. Recreation Community Education Advisory Board, Councilor Storey King. Shellfish Conservation Commission, Councilor Gruber. Council Committees, Board Committee Nominating Committee, Councilor Kopp, Gruber, and Segrist. Senior Tax Property Committee, Councilor Kopp, Foster, and Storey King. Cumberland North Yarmouth Joint Standings Committee, Councilor Eads, Foster, and Storey King. Falmouth Cumberland Chamber of Commerce, Councilor Vale, alternate Councilor Segrist. Finance Committee, Councilor Foster, Gruber, Segrist, and Vale. Ordinance Committee, Councilors Eads, Storey King, and Vale. TIF Committee, Councilor Kopp, Gruber, and Segrist. Eco Maine Regional Waste System, Mr. Manager. Eco Maine alternate Assistant Manager, Mr. Bolduc. Greater Portland Council of Governments, Councilor Storey King and Vale. PAX Policy Committee, Town Manager. PAX Policy Committee alternate, Councilor Gruber.
I expect everybody to work hard.
You got it, Mr. Chairman.
And don't miss a meeting, because you can get appointed to something else.
It's true.
All right. That brings us to new business.
Oh, wait, don't we have to?
Do we need to vote on that?
I guess there is a action here. Anybody want to?
I'll give you. I move to approve the fiscal year 22 town council committee assignments as presented.
A second.
Moved and seconded. All right. Anybody have any further discussion? All in favor of that? Unanimous. All right. New business. Mark?
No new business at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Shirley?
I looked up the Cumberland Firework Ordinance, and the allowable times for the celebration of Independence Day is July 3rd from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., July 4th from 9 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. on July 5th, and July 5th from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. That said, I hope people are respectful of their neighbors. If you know that you have a neighbor that has difficulty with fireworks, you might want to just notify them that you might be intending, just as a politeness. I wish everyone a happy and safe Independence Day.
Tom?
Oh, one more thing.
I had a feeling you had
forgot.
something else.
I was the lone counselor at the farmer's market on Saturday, and it did not rain. It was good weather, and I brought my dog because I thought, I'll kill two birds with one stone. Maybe dog people will come up and talk to me if I have this cute little dog, and my dog will be socialized a little bit. So that worked. I had a couple of people come up to me with my dog. Mr. Vail, you might consider that next time you sign up. And as always, I enjoyed my time with the lovely Carolyn Small, who was there selling all things Cumberland Bicentennial. Sorry for that interjection.
Very nice, very nice.
The food pantry, I have to just tell you, we had, I think 50 customers, 55 customers. And I do call them customers because they are customers. And I want to thank, again, all the volunteers that helped us through that. The Coastal Waters Commission met last week, and the Finance Committee, as we had talked about this evening, also had a meeting, so I do appreciate that. And I gotta admit, I gotta tell you that I'm very, very impressed by the input that I get from, as chair of the Finance Committee, so thank you. That's all I have, Bob.
Ronnie?
Mr. Stiles, I still have some money for you for the 4-H thing. Our good friend Dean donated $20, and I did as well. We received a copy of an email about some medical marijuana facilities in the West End, and some people in the West End think we turned our back on this problem, which we absolutely did not. The state of Maine put us between a rock and a hard spot about 2 years ago, Bill. We had to basically justify where we could put these or where we wanted these in town, other than letting them just go wild and go town-wide. So we determined as a council where we thought would be good places in all of our zoning for this. And it wasn't done with a blind eye. It was done with a considerable amount of thought. And I just want people to be aware that we do know what's going on. We didn't want this. We didn't vote for this. We had to comply. And what we did was to try to minimize the impact on the community. And lo and behold, we do have a bunch of grows in West Cumberland. We do have them other places in town. But we didn't plan on any of this, and we didn't want any of this. This was kind of forced on us by the voters of the state of Maine. So I just wanted to clarify that, so.
Thank you. Mike?
Just one thing, we had a great reception tonight, earlier, for George Turner. I want to thank George for everything. He's a really good man. I'm glad he and his wife showed up tonight. And has been the practice for the last 2 elections. The councilors that took their place were class acts. Mark, thank you for showing up tonight for George, and the words were wonderful, what you said earlier, so. And Allison did it last year, so there's no doubt the quality of our candidates. And that, Mr. Chairman, is all I have.
Allison?
I just want to extend an invite to our entire community and our neighbors in North Yarmouth. On Wednesday evening of this week at 6 p.m., your community ad hoc mental health committee that's kind of come together, and 3 of us put together Growing with Gratitude. So the event's at Skyline Farm. Steph McDonough from Farm to Table Kids is going to join us. And the folks at Skyline have generously allowed us to come and use their facility. And so it really is about learning about how our brains work a little bit and how they're predisposed and programmed to find the negative, because it protects us, and practices that we can do together individually that help to kind of reprogram a bit, and also to share and talk about ways, especially through COVID, that folks have either felt that negativity or to be able to share together how they've combated it. I will say this is for the whole family. We will have the conversation presentation part under the big white tent at Skyline Farm, and then we also have some activities planned for the children as well. So they will be kind of taken care of, if you will, and kept busy for the hour and a half that we have planned for the event. So Skyline Farm on Wednesday, 6 p.m. to about 7:30. Hope to see you all there.
Okay, so, a couple things. Alice and I got together with the town manager and Brenda the other day and talked about some goal settings for ourselves for the next year. And so anyways, I'm excited about the next year. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to get our hands dirty and so, kind of a quick list here. Education discussion around impending property revaluation, begin the update to comprehensive plan, building a relationship with the school board, improving our relationship with North Yarmouth, and exploring sharing of services. Rebuilding relationships with Falmouth, Yarmouth, Gray, Wyndham, discussion of future shared services. Building community support networks, building upon mental wellness support, which Allison just touched on, and continuing of the DEI work. I just started the second segment, I guess,
Module.
online, and I can't wait to come back and kind of had a readout of what that's involved with. Talk about climate change and farmlands and natural resources. And then following up on that, I had a meeting with the chair of the school board this past Friday, and the potential leadership of North Yarmouth, Brian Seitz and Jim Moulton. A very, very productive meeting. There was an understanding that the 3 entities have to get together, have to start talking about shared services, combined efforts, an understanding that the school cannot continue to be just a mechanism to take the taxpayers' dollars without a explanation of how they do it, why they do it, and the cost. We talked about just a lot of different things that I really don't want to get into with you tonight, but I will say that there was a willingness to crack open the books, if you will. The conversation is around at a very minimum, a bi-monthly meeting, not bi-monthly, but every other month get together. I think we're going to have a meeting on 4th of August. We're going to try to have something before that with the leadership. But I think the initial meeting will be with the entire school board, the Cumberland Town Council, North Yarmouth Select Board, and I would urge everybody to think about what are the things that work, what are the things that don't work, what we can improve upon, and what shared services really look like. and build on that. So it was a good meeting. I was pleased with it. I was pleased that there was no nobody was holding back. So I came away with feeling that we might have a chance to make some accomplishments this year. Bill, you have anything to add?
I wondered if there was any.
Wrong bill, but I'll get to you.
Mr. Chairman, I think, just for the counselor's sake, are you looking for counselors to bring back information for your next council meeting in a workshop format for goal setting for?
I'm glad you brought that up. There's a workshop on the 12th, so I would like us to, two things. Think about what our shared goals are with our other two entities, and then want us to come back with some concrete ideas of what our own goal setting will be for the next year.
I think the other challenge will be is how you want to accomplish that. In the past, we have tried to do it on council meeting nights for the most part, but it is becoming more and more difficult to schedule other events that you have prior to a council meeting. So you may want to think about a meeting outside of the normal council meeting night for that goal setting to kind of really get it going, and so it just doesn't die on the vine. You've got a pretty good list that we'll forward to the council with the minutes. Just some thoughts, and it's difficult because you all have committees and other obligations, so just don't know how we get there just on council committee meeting nights.
Let's, Alice and I, and you get back to you on that.
Your thought being if we did 6 o'clock, we're cut short at 7.
Well, you have other committees that want to meet with you in workshop. You've got, the assessor coming up with revals, and you've got a lot of different items that need some more kind of fleshing out before it's ready for prime time. And we've done that typically in that 6 to 7 period of time, and putting that on the back of that, it might not get you where you want to get to.
Bill?
Microphone.
Hear an update on the Historical Society building, how the construction is coming?
Repeat the question.
You want to?
You want to report on the Historical Society building and how the construction is coming. We have a meeting scheduled with the leadership of the Historical Society this week to kind of review that progress. The contractor is basically on schedule. We have had all of the remediation work done between asbestos and lead products removed from the building. The roof has been put in place. The internal walls are starting to go up. We have basically got, we're pretty much on schedule. I was hoping that the Steve Moriarty, who is the president of the Historical Society, might present that to you at a future council meeting so that we could have that as an agenda item. We could bring some photos in and show you where we're at. We're still planning to be open this fall, so I think we're still in good shape for meeting that goal. Yeah. And to date, it chugs along. It's a difficult process, and there'll be more work to come for sure.
Bottom of the page. Anybody want to move adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Turn the damn heat up in here.
Mike, close